The autumn rain pelted against the tall windows of Kensington Palace as Kate walked through the private library, her fingers trailing along the ancient book spines. She had come here seeking solitude, a rare moment of peace away from the endless royal engagements and protocol that filled her days. The room smelled of old leather and furniture polish, a comforting scent that reminded her of her grandfather's study back in Berkshire. She wasn't supposed to be in this particular section of the palace. It was Charles's private study area, a place where the king retreated to handle personal correspondence and matters of state. But, with Charles away on a diplomatic visit to Canada and the staff occupied with preparations for the upcoming state dinner, Kate had seized the opportunity to explore this normally forbidden territory. As she moved past the mahogany desk, something caught her eye. A drawer had been left slightly ajar, unusual for the meticulously organized monarch. Kate hesitated, knowing she should simply close it and leave. But curiosity, that trait that had both blessed and cursed her throughout her life in the royal family, got the better of her. Inside the drawer lay a collection of documents, their edges yellowed with age. The top paper bore an official seal she didn't recognize, and the date stamped on it made her pause. 1974, years before Charles had married Diana. Her hands trembled slightly as she lifted the document, her eyes scanning the formal legal language. Certificate of marriage, the heading read in bold letters. Below it, in neat typescript, were two names, Charles Philip Arthur George, and the second name made Kate's breath catch in her throat. It wasn't Diana Spencer. It was someone else entirely, someone whose name Kate had never heard mentioned in all her years within the royal circle. The room suddenly felt colder despite the warmth from the fireplace. Kate sank into the leather chair, the document still clutched in her hands. Her mind raced through the implications. If this was real, if Charles had been married before Diana, then everything the public knew about the royal succession, about the legitimacy of William's claim to the throne, could be called into question. She read through the rest of the papers with growing alarm. There were letters, written in Charles's distinctive handwriting, speaking of love and commitment to this mystery woman. There were photographs too, grainy black and white images of a young Charles with a beautiful woman Kate didn't recognize, both of them laughing at what appeared to be a small, private ceremony. The most damning document was at the bottom of the pile, a legal brief from a royal attorney discussing the constitutional crisis that would ensue if news of this marriage ever became public. The paper outlined various scenarios, each more catastrophic than the last for the monarchy's stability. Kate's phone buzzed in her pocket, startling her from her shocked state. It was William, texting to ask where she was. The state dinner preparation meeting was about to begin. She quickly photographed each document with her phone, her fingers shaking as she tried to capture every detail clearly. Then, with extreme care, she returned everything to the drawer exactly as she had found it. As she hurried from the library, Kate's mind whirled with questions. Who was this woman Charles had married? What had happened to her? Why had this marriage been hidden for nearly 50 years? And, most importantly, who else knew about this explosive secret? The corridors of Kensington Palace had never felt more oppressive as Kate made her way to the meeting. She plastered on her practiced smile as she entered the room full of palace staff and advisors, but, inside, she felt as though she was carrying a bomb that could destroy everything she held dear. Throughout the meeting, she found it impossible to concentrate on the seating arrangements and menu selections being discussed. Her phone felt heavy in her pocket, weighted with the photographs that could potentially bring down the monarchy. William noticed her distraction, reaching over to squeeze her hand with a concerned look. She managed a reassuring smile, but guilt gnawed at her. How could she keep this from her husband? Yet how could she tell him that his father, the king, had been living a lie for decades? That night, as William slept beside her, Kate lay awake staring at the ceiling. She pulled up the photographs on her phone, studying them again in the blue glow of the screen. The marriage certificate was definitely authentic. She recognized the official seals and signatures of witnesses. One name among the witnesses made her blood run cold. It was Philip, the late Duke of Edinburgh. William's grandfather had known about this marriage and had helped keep it secret. The next morning, Kate went through her royal duties like an automaton. She smiled at the cameras during a children's hospital visit, made small talk at a charity luncheon, and posed for photographs at an art gallery opening. But, all the while, her mind was elsewhere, trying to piece together the puzzle she had stumbled upon. She began to notice things she had overlooked before. The way certain senior courtiers would exchange meaningful glances when certain topics arose. The way Charles would sometimes pause mid-sentence, as if catching himself before revealing something. The way the queen consort Camilla would occasionally mention the past with a weight that suggested more than anyone knew. Kate decided she needed more information before taking any action. She began discreetly researching, using secure computers and covering her tracks carefully. What she found only deepened the mystery. There were gaps in Charles's official biography from 1974, periods where his whereabouts were vague or contradictory. There were society photographs from that era where a woman's face had been obviously edited out, leaving Charles seemingly alone at events where body language suggested he had been with someone. The strain began to show. William commented on her lack of appetite at dinner, and her lady-in-waiting mentioned she seemed distracted during fittings. Kate knew she was walking a dangerous line. The royal household had eyes everywhere, and any unusual behavior would be noted and reported. 3 weeks after her discovery, Kate received a call that made her blood run cold. Charles was returning early from Canada and had requested a private meeting with her at Clarence House. The formal nature of the request, going through official channels rather than a casual family communication, set off every alarm bell in her head. As her car pulled up to Clarence House, Kate clutched her handbag tightly, her phone with those damning photographs tucked inside. She had backed everything up to a secure cloud server, just in case. The butler who met her at the door had an unusually grave expression, and the walk to Charles's study felt like a march to the gallows. Charles was standing by the window when she entered, his back to her, hands clasped behind him in that characteristic pose. When he turned, his face was unreadable, but there was something in his eyes that made Kate's heart race. "Catherine," he said, using her formal name in a way that emphasized the seriousness of the moment. "Please, sit down. We have much to discuss." As Kate lowered herself into the offered chair, she noticed a file on Charles's desk. Her heart nearly stopped when she recognized the same aged documents she had photographed weeks earlier. Charles followed her gaze and nodded slowly. "I believe you've already seen these," he said quietly. "The question now is what we do about it." The silence that followed seemed to stretch for eternity. Kate's mind raced through possible responses, but before she could speak, Charles continued. "You weren't the first to discover these documents, Catherine. Over the years, 3 others have stumbled upon this complication. Each time, we've managed to contain the situation. But you're different. You're not just anyone. You're the future queen consort, the mother of the future king. What you choose to do with this knowledge will determine the fate of the monarchy itself." Kate straightened in her chair, summoning all the composure her years of royal training had given her. "I need to know the truth, Charles. All of it. Who was she? What happened? And why has this been hidden for so long?" Charles moved to pour himself a brandy from the crystal decanter on the side table, his movements betraying a slight tremor. He offered one to Kate, who declined with a shake of her head. She needed her wits about her for whatever was coming. "Her name was Alexandra," Charles began, his voice heavy with a mixture of old pain and resignation. "Alexandra Morrison. She was the daughter of a Scottish earl, beautiful, brilliant, and completely unsuitable by royal standards of the time. We met at a university function when I was at Cambridge. It was immediate, that connection. The kind of thing you read about in fairy tales, ironically enough." He paused, taking a sip of his brandy before continuing. "We were young, impulsive. We eloped to Scotland, married in a tiny chapel with only my trusted aide and her sister as witnesses. For 3 months, we lived in absolute happiness, hidden away from the world. We had plans, you see. We were going to announce it properly, face whatever came together." "What happened?" Kate asked, though she dreaded the answer. "Reality happened," Charles replied bitterly. "My father found out. The constitutional implications were staggering. The government was brought in, lawyers, advisors, even the Archbishop of Canterbury. They all agreed the marriage had to be annulled, erased as if it had never happened. The stability of the realm, they said, depended on it. Kate watched as decades-old pain flickered across Charles's features. Despite everything, she felt a stab of sympathy for the young man he had been, forced to choose between love and duty. Alexandra fought it at first, Charles continued. She was fierce, unwilling to be erased from history. But, then, they told her she was pregnant. Our child, conceived in those brief months of happiness. The pressure intensified. They made it clear that any child from our union would live under constant threat, would never know peace or safety. In the end, she agreed to the annulment for the sake of our unborn child. The revelation hit Kate like a physical blow. You have another child? Charles nodded slowly. A daughter. Born in secret, raised by Alexandra's sister in New Zealand. I've never met her. It was part of the agreement. Complete separation, for everyone's protection. The implications were staggering. William had a half-sister he knew nothing about. There was another potential heir to the throne living somewhere in New Zealand, completely unaware of her true parentage. Does she know? Kate asked. No, Charles said firmly. And she never can. Alexandra made me promise before she died, yes, she passed 5 years ago, that our daughter would be allowed to live a normal life, free from the burden of this secret. Kate's phone buzzed in her bag, but she ignored it. Nothing could be more important than this moment, this revelation that could rewrite royal history. Why are you telling me this? She asked. Why not simply deny everything if I confronted you? Charles smiled sadly. Because you're not the kind of person who would let this go. You would dig deeper, ask questions, perhaps even hire investigators. And, in this digital age, secrets are harder to keep than they once were. Better to bring you into the circle of trust than risk you exposing it in a way we cannot control. The circle of trust, Kate repeated. Who else knows? Camilla, of course. And has always known, she was my confidant through it all. The Queen knew, though we never spoke of it directly. A handful of senior courtiers and government officials, all sworn to secrecy under the Official Secrets Act. And, now, you. The weight of this knowledge settled on Kate's shoulders like a lead cloak. She thought of William, of their children, of the life they were building together. All of it built on a foundation that was far shakier than she had ever imagined. The journey back to Kensington Palace felt surreal. Kate sat in the back of the royal car, watching London pass by through tinted windows, but seeing nothing. Her mind replayed Charles's revelations over and over, each detail adding another crack to the perfect facade of royal life she had grown accustomed to. When she arrived home, William was in his study, working on a speech for an upcoming environmental summit. He looked up with a smile as she entered, but his expression quickly changed to concern when he saw her face. Kate? What's wrong? You look like you've seen a ghost. She closed the door behind her and leaned against it, trying to find the words. How did one tell their husband that his entire life had been built on a carefully constructed lie? That he had a sister he'd never known about? That the grandfather he'd idolized had been part of an elaborate cover-up? William, she began, her voice barely above a whisper. There's something I need to tell you. Something about your father. Over the next hour, Kate revealed everything. She showed him the photographs on her phone, recounted Charles's confession, and watched as her husband's face went through a series of transformations: disbelief, anger, hurt, and, finally, a kind of weary resignation. He has another child, William said flatly, staring at the marriage certificate on Kate's phone screen. A daughter. My sister. And he's never even met her. Kate reached for his hand, but he pulled away, standing abruptly and beginning to pace. All these years, all the talk about duty and responsibility, about putting the crown first, and he'd already failed at that before I was even born. The hypocrisy of it all. William, please, Kate said softly. He was young. The pressure must have been enormous. The pressure? William whirled around, his blue eyes blazing. What about the pressure on that woman? On their child? They were erased, Kate. Written out of history like they never existed.
And everyone just went along with it.
The argument that followed was one of the worst they'd ever had. William's sense of betrayal ran deep, not just at his father's deception but at the entire system that had enabled it. Kate found herself in the unexpected position of defending Charles, trying to make William understand the impossible position his father had been placed in. "What would you have done?" she finally asked.
"If it had been us?
"If your family, the government, everyone in power had told you that being with me would destroy the monarchy, would put our children in danger?"
Can you honestly say you would have chosen differently?"
That stopped William short. He sank into a chair, his anger deflating into something more like grief.
"I don't know," he admitted. "God help me, I don't know."
They sat in silence for a long time, the weight of the secret settling between them. Finally, William spoke again, his voice steadier now.
"We need to know more. About this woman, Alexandra. About their daughter. If we're going to carry this secret, we need to understand all of it."
Kate nodded, relieved that William was thinking strategically rather than emotionally.
"Charles said Alexandra died 5 years ago. But the daughter is still alive, living in New Zealand. She doesn't know the truth."
"We need to find her," William said decisively. "Not to contact her, but to know who she is, what kind of life she's living.
If this ever comes out, we need to be prepared."
The investigation they launched over the following weeks was conducted with utmost secrecy. Using trusted contacts and discreet inquiries, they slowly pieced together the story of Alexandra Morrison's life after her annulled marriage to Charles. She had returned to Scotland initially, but the proximity to the royal family proved too painful. With her sister Margaret, she had emigrated to New Zealand in 1975, just months before giving birth to a daughter she named Elizabeth, a choice that seemed both poignant and pointed, given the circumstances.
Alexandra had never married again.
She'd built a successful career as a landscape architect, designing gardens for some of New Zealand's most prestigious properties. She'd raised Elizabeth alone, with Margaret's help, never revealing the identity of the child's father. To everyone who knew them, Elizabeth's father was simply someone who had died before she was born. The photographs they managed to obtain of Elizabeth, now Dr. Elizabeth Morrison, a respected pediatric surgeon in Auckland, were revelatory. The resemblance to Charles was unmistakable in certain angles, but she also had her mother's delicate features and warm smile. She was married with 2 teenage children of her own, living a life of comfortable anonymity on the other side of the world. "She looks happy," Kate observed, studying a recent photo from a medical conference where Elizabeth had been a keynote speaker.
"She's built a good life."
"Without us," William said bitterly.
"Without knowing she has a family here.
Nieces and nephews who've never heard her name."
The strain of carrying this secret began to affect their daily lives.
At family gatherings, William could barely look at his father without tension crackling between them. Charles noticed, of course, and correctly surmised that Kate had shared the truth with his son. An awkward dance began, with Charles attempting to create opportunities to speak privately with William, and William expertly avoiding them. Camilla, ever observant, picked up on the shift in dynamics immediately. At a private dinner at Highgrove, she cornered Kate in the garden under the pretense of showing her the new rose plantings.
"You know," Camilla said simply, not bothering with pretense. "Charles told you about Alexandra." Kate nodded, not trusting herself to speak.
"It nearly destroyed him, you know," Camilla continued, deadheading roses with practiced efficiency.
"The guilt. He loved her desperately.
When they forced the annulment, he fought it with everything he had.
But, in the end, what choice did he have? Let the monarchy fall? Watch the woman he loved and their child become targets for every Republican, every enemy of the crown?
It doesn't make it right," Kate said quietly.
No, Camilla agreed. It doesn't.
But right and wrong become complicated when you're dealing with institutions that have lasted 1,000 years. The monarchy survives because it adapts, because it makes hard choices.
This was one of them. And Diana? Kate asked. Did she know? Camilla's face darkened. No.
Though I think she suspected Charles had loved someone before her. It contributed to her insecurities, her belief that she was never his first choice. In a way, she was right, though not for the reasons she thought. The conversation was interrupted by William appearing in the garden doorway, his expression making it clear he knew exactly what they had been discussing. The dinner that followed was excruciating, with forced conversation and long, uncomfortable silences.
That night, as they drove home, William finally broke.
"I can't do this," he said.
"I can't pretend everything is normal when I know what I know. We have to do something."
"What would you suggest?"
Kate asked carefully. "Expose it all? Destroy your father? Drag that poor woman in New Zealand into a media circus that would consume her life? I don't know." William's hands gripped the steering wheel tightly.
"But, this secret, it's like poison. It's affecting everything, how I see my father, the institution, even our own marriage."
"How many more secrets are there, Kate? How many more lies are we living?" Kate didn't have an answer for that.
Over the following days, she watched her husband struggle with this new knowledge. He threw himself into his work with almost manic energy, as if he could outrun the truth through sheer activity. But, at night, she would find him in his study, staring at the photographs of Elizabeth Morrison she had printed out, studying the face of the sister he'd never known. The crisis point came 3 weeks later. A tabloid journalist had somehow gotten wind that there was tension in the royal family, and speculation was running wild. Most of it was off-the-mark affairs, financial scandals, health crises, but Kate knew it was only a matter of time before someone started digging in the right direction. It was in who provided the solution, in her typically direct manner. She arrived at Kensington Palace unannounced one evening, breezing past the surprised staff and finding William and Kate in the private sitting room. "Right," she said without preamble.
"This has gone on long enough. William, you're brooding like a teenager, and it's becoming noticeable. We need to sort this out."
"Aunt Anne," William began, but she cut him off with a sharp gesture.
"I know you know about Alexandra and Elizabeth." "Yes, Charles told me you'd found out." "And, yes, I've known all along. Now, you have 2 choices. You can continue this sulk, let it poison your relationship with your father and potentially expose a secret that would hurt innocent people. Or you can accept that the past is complicated, that people make impossible choices, and move forward. How can you be so casual about this?" William demanded. "He has another child. I have a sister." Anne's expression softened slightly. "You think I don't understand? You think I haven't thought about that girl over the years? Wondered what she was like, whether she inherited the Windsor stubbornness or her mother's artistic temperament? But, William, what good would come of disrupting her life now? She's built something separate from all this. Would you really take that from her?" It was the turning point. Over the following weeks, William slowly came to terms with the reality of the situation. He even agreed to a private meeting with Charles, though Kate wasn't privy to what was said between father and son. William emerged from it red-eyed but calmer, some understanding reached between them. The investigation into Elizabeth Morrison was quietly concluded, the files locked away with the other royal secrets that would never see the light of day. But, the knowledge of her existence had changed something fundamental in both William and Kate's understanding of the royal family they were part of. Late one night, as they lay in bed, William turned to Kate in the darkness. "Do you think we should tell George when he's older? About Elizabeth?" Kate considered this carefully. "I don't know. Maybe. When he's old enough to understand the complexities, the reasons why some secrets must be kept." "I hate it," William said quietly. "The deception, the cover-ups. When I'm king, I want things to be different. More honest. More open." Kate moved closer to him, taking his hand in hers. "Then, that's what we'll do. But, for now, we protect those who need protecting. Including Elizabeth." The morning brought new challenges, new royal duties to perform. But, as Kate watched William at breakfast with their children, she saw a new maturity in him, a deeper understanding of the weight of the crown he would one day wear. The secret of Charles's first marriage had nearly torn them apart, but, ultimately,
it had forced them to confront the complex reality of the institution they were part of. Still, Kate couldn't help but wonder what other secrets lay hidden in the royal archives, what other lives had been altered or erased in service to the crown. She thought of Elizabeth Morrison, saving lives in a hospital on the other side of the world, unaware that she was a princess who might have been. 6 months had passed since Kate's discovery in the library, and life had settled into a new kind of normal. The secret of Elizabeth Morrison remained locked away, known only to the small circle of family members and trusted advisors. But secrets, Kate had learned, had a way of creating ripples even when they remained hidden. The changes were subtle but significant. William's relationship with his father had evolved from cold distance to a careful understanding. They would never have the easy warmth they'd once shared, but they had found a way to work together, united by their shared knowledge and the weight of protecting Elizabeth's anonymity. Kate had become the unofficial keeper of the secret, the one who monitored news from New Zealand, who ensured that no investigative journalist got too close to the truth. It was a role she hadn't asked for but had accepted as part of her duty to the family she had married into. Then, on a grey Tuesday morning in March, everything changed. The email arrived in Charles's private account, forwarded immediately to Kate and William with a note that simply read, "We need to meet immediately."
The email was from a law firm in Auckland, New Zealand.
Dr. Elizabeth Morrison had been diagnosed with a rare genetic condition, one that was hereditary and could affect her children. In seeking treatment, her doctors had conducted extensive genetic testing, and the results had raised questions about her paternity that couldn't be ignored. "She's hired genealogists," Charles explained as they gathered in his study at Clarence House, the same room where he had first told Kate the truth. "They've traced her mother's family tree extensively, but her father's side is a blank.
She knows something doesn't add up."
William paced the room, his agitation clear.
"What are the chances she'll discover the truth on her own?"
"Higher than we'd like," admitted Sir Edward Thornton, the royal family's most trusted legal advisor.
"Genetic testing has advanced significantly.
If she decides to use one of those commercial DNA services."
He didn't need to finish. They all understood the implications.
If Elizabeth submitted her DNA to a public database, it would only be a matter of time before connections were made to the royal family. "We have to tell her," Kate said quietly.
"Before she finds out some other way." The room erupted in protests.
Sir Edward spoke of constitutional crises, Charles of his promise to Alexandra, William of the media storm that would ensue.
But Kate held firm.
"Put yourself in her position," she argued. "She's facing a health crisis, her children might be at risk, and she needs complete medical information. We can't let our fears endanger her life or her children's lives." It took 3 days of intense negotiations, consultations with government officials, and soul-searching conversations before a decision was reached. Elizabeth would be told the truth, but under carefully controlled circumstances.
Kate volunteered to be the one to make the approach.
As the one who had discovered the secret, as a mother herself, and as someone who had married into the royal family rather than being born into it, she felt she might be the best person to break this earth-shattering news. The flight to New Zealand was the longest of Kate's life. She traveled under an assumed name, with minimal security, maintaining the fiction of a private business trip. During the 24 hours in the air, she rehearsed what she would say 100 times, never finding the right words. Auckland was experiencing an unusually warm autumn when Kate arrived. She checked into a discreet hotel under her alias and spent a sleepless night staring at the ceiling, wondering if she was about to destroy a woman's life. The meeting had been arranged at Elizabeth's home, under the pretense of a consultation about a charitable foundation interested in funding her research. It was a Saturday morning, chosen because Elizabeth's husband had taken their children to a rugby match, ensuring privacy. Kate's hands shook as she rang the doorbell of the modest but elegant house in the suburb of Remuera. When the door opened, she found herself face to face with William's sister. The resemblance to Charles was even more striking in person. Elizabeth had the same thoughtful eyes, the same way of tilting her head when puzzled. She was dressed casually in jeans and a soft sweater, her dark hair pulled back in a ponytail.
"M.S. Davidson?" Elizabeth said, using the alias Kate had provided. "Please, come in. I've made tea." The next hour was the most difficult of Kate's life.
She began slowly, explaining who she really was, watching Elizabeth's expression shift from confusion to shock to disbelief. When she produced the photographs of the marriage certificate, of Charles and Alexandra's wedding, Elizabeth's hands trembled as she took them. "This isn't possible," Elizabeth whispered, staring at the image of her mother as a young bride.
"She told me my father died. She told me."
"She was protecting you," Kate said gently. "They both were.
The annulment was forced on them.
Your mother agreed to it to keep you safe, to give you a normal life."
Elizabeth stood abruptly, walking to the window that overlooked her garden.
Kate could see her shoulders shaking and gave her time to process this devastating revelation. "Charles," Elizabeth finally said, his name sounding foreign on her lips.
"The King of England is my father."
"Yes,"
Kate confirmed simply. "And William. Prince William is your half-brother. My husband."
"Yes."
Elizabeth laughed, a sound devoid of humor. "I've saved the lives of countless children in my career.
I've won awards, published papers, built a reputation.
And, all this time, I was, what? A princess in exile? A shameful secret?"
"Never shameful," Kate said firmly. "Charles has carried the weight of losing you and your mother his entire life. He honored your mother's wishes to keep you free from all of this, but it was never because he was ashamed.
It was love, as painful as that might be to hear."
The conversation that followed was raw and emotional. Elizabeth had 1,000 questions about Charles, about the circumstances of the annulment, about why she was being told now. Kate answered as honestly as she could, explaining about the genetic condition that had triggered this revelation. "I need the medical history," Elizabeth said finally, her practical nature asserting itself.
"Complete genetic information from Charles's side.
My son has been showing symptoms, and the doctors need to know everything."
"Of course," Kate assured her. "We'll provide everything you need.
Discreet specialists, the best care available.
Whatever you need." Elizabeth's laugh was bitter. "The royal treatment, you mean?"
"The treatment of a family member," Kate corrected gently. "Because that's what you are, whether the world knows it or not." As the afternoon wore on, Kate saw Elizabeth begin to process the reality of her situation. The doctor in her started asking practical questions about genetic conditions in the royal bloodline, about medical resources, about what this meant for her children's futures.
"What happens now?" Elizabeth finally asked. "Do I have to go to London? Meet him? Become some sort of... I don't even know what I would be."
"You don't have to do anything," Kate assured her. "This is your choice. Charles would very much like to meet you, if and when you're ready.
But there's no obligation. You can continue your life exactly as it is. We'll ensure your privacy is protected."
"My children," Elizabeth said suddenly.
"They're technically in line to the throne, aren't they?" Kate had dreaded this question.
"Technically, the annulment means that legally, you were never legitimate.
But, bloodwise, yes, they're Charles's grandchildren." The sound of a car in the driveway interrupted them. Elizabeth's family was returning.
Kate watched as Elizabeth quickly composed herself, the skill of a surgeon used to managing crises serving her well. "I need time," Elizabeth said. "To think, to process this."
Can you stay in Auckland for a few days?" Kate nodded. "As long as you need."
The next 3 days were a delicate dance.
Kate remained at her hotel, available but not intrusive.
Elizabeth called twice, each time with more questions, her voice steadier as she worked through the implications of her new reality. On the third day, Elizabeth asked to meet again, this time at a quiet cafe near the harbor. She looked tired but resolved. "I want to meet him," she said without preamble. "Charles.
My father. But on my terms.
Privately, away from all the pomp and ceremony. And I want my children to know the truth when they're older. They deserve to know their full heritage, even if we choose not to claim it publicly."
Kate felt a wave of relief. That can be arranged. Charles will be overjoyed. Will he? Elizabeth asked skeptically. Or will I just be a reminder of his past mistakes?
You'll be the daughter he's mourned for 50 years, Kate said softly. The child he was forced to give up. Trust me, Elizabeth, meeting you will heal a wound he's carried his entire life. The return journey to London was filled with encrypted communications, careful planning, and delicate negotiations. A meeting was arranged for the following month, when Charles would be on a private retreat in Scotland. Elizabeth would fly in secretly with her family, and father and daughter would finally meet after a lifetime apart. Kate was there when it happened, in a small drawing room at Birkhall, Charles's Scottish residence. She watched as Charles, the normally composed monarch, broke down completely when Elizabeth walked through the door. The embrace between father and daughter was long and tearful. 50 years of separation dissolved in a moment.
William's meeting with his sister was equally emotional.
Kate watched her husband discover a sibling he'd never known existed, saw him find in Elizabeth echoes of their shared heritage, mannerisms that were unmistakably Windsor despite her different upbringing. Over the following days, the family slowly knit together. Elizabeth's children, teenagers who were initially overwhelmed by the revelation, gradually warmed to their newfound relatives. George, Charlotte, and Louis were told they had cousins in New Zealand, though the full truth would wait until they were older. The secret remained protected, but it had transformed. What had once been a source of shame and division had become a private family truth, binding them together. Elizabeth returned to New Zealand with the promise of regular contact, secure communications, and the medical support she needed. A year later, at a private ceremony at Balmoral, Charles formally acknowledged Elizabeth as his daughter in front of the immediate family. No legal documents were signed, the constitutional implications remained too complex, but, within the family, she was recognized and embraced. Kate often reflected on that rainy day in the library when she'd first discovered those hidden documents. What had seemed like a potential disaster had ultimately led to a healing that the family desperately needed. The monarchy's public face remained unchanged, but, behind palace walls, a family had been made whole. Elizabeth continued her work in New Zealand, saving lives and raising her children with the knowledge that they were part of something larger, even if the world would never know. She visited Britain twice a year, always discreetly, building relationships with the half-siblings she'd never known existed. The secret of Charles's first marriage remained hidden from the public, but it was no longer a source of pain and division. It had become part of the complex tapestry of royal life, a reminder that even kings and queens were human, capable of great love and great sacrifice. As Kate watched Elizabeth and William laugh together at a private family dinner, she realized that sometimes the greatest acts of courage weren't public ones. Sometimes they happened in quiet rooms, in difficult conversations, in the choice to embrace truth even when it threatened everything you knew. The palace was no longer in turmoil. It had found a new equilibrium, built on honesty within the family circle and the understanding that some secrets protected people rather than institutions. Kate had learned that being royal wasn't about perfection, it was about navigating imperfection with grace, protecting those who needed protection, and finding ways to heal old wounds while honoring necessary silences. The hidden marriage papers remained in Charles's drawer, no longer a bomb waiting to explode but a reminder of a love that had endured despite everything, and a daughter who had finally come home.